Well, welcome everyone. Good to see you all here today. Thank you for joining us despite all of the goings on overseas, the pomp and circumstance. Glad you're here. Quick catch up for where we're at in our journey through Genesis. Abraham, who we've been following in his journey of faith, has passed away. His son Isaac is now our new protagonist. And we're following along with Isaac. And I just want to highlight as we get into these next couple of chapters that we're doing this study with our hermeneutic framework. We're looking at the author that tradition says is Moses, what the text actually says, and what the text was intended to say to its intended reader. So the author chose Moses as the pen name, or it was actually Moses, who we know to be a man of letters. But the author penned this largely to highlight the history of the Hebrew people, and moreover, to highlight that they are a set apart people in the eyes of the one true God. So with that in mind, we're coming to more of this history of these people, and more examples of why these people are set apart and how these people are set apart. So if you've got your Bibles, turn with me to Genesis 26. I'm going to read a big chunk of this, try to make some headway here, so that we can tell Deutsch that we've made it through more than half of the book of Genesis. So Genesis 26, verse 1, this is after, just to give you some context, this is after the death of Abraham. And this is after the birth of Esau and Jacob, which are the first two kids of Abraham's son, Isaac. So Esau and Jacob are Abraham's grandchildren. And there's a little brief moment in 25 where it explains a little bit of the character of these two young men, and essentially a story foreshadowing a story that's going to be repeated in the next chapter of Esau selling his birthright to his brother for a bowl of what must have been incredible stew. So Genesis 1, I'll read out from there. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the former famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar, to King Abimelech of the Philistines. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Settle in the land that I shall show you. Reside in this land as an alien, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and I will fulfill the oath that I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven, and I will give your offspring all these lands, and all the nations of the earth shall gain blessing for themselves through your offspring, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." So Isaac settled in Gerar. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." Boy, I heard that before. For he was afraid to say, "My wife," thinking, or else these men of the place might kill me for the sake of Rebekah, because she is attractive in appearance. When Isaac had been there for a long time, King Abimelech of the Philistines looked out of a window and saw him fondling his wife Rebekah. So Abimelech called for Isaac and said, "So she is your wife? Why then did you say she is my sister?" Isaac said to him, "Because I thought I might die because of her." Abimelech said, "What is it that you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, whoever touches this man or his wife shall be put to death. Isaac sowed seed in that land, and in the same year reaped 100-fold. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich. He prospered more and more until he became very wealthy. He had possessions of flocks and herds and a great household, so that the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistines had stopped up and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of his father Abraham. And Abimelech said to Isaac, go away from us. You've become too powerful for us. So Isaac departed from there and camped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. Isaac dug again the wells of water that had been dug in the days of his father Abraham. For the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. And he gave them the names that his father gave them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water, the herders of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herders, saying, the water is ours. So he called the well Esek, because they contended with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that one also. So he called it Sitnah. He moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called it Rehoboth, saying, now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. It's maybe good to stop here. It's nice to know the name of Rehoboth. You know, definitely a peaceful place in my life. When I lived in Washington, D.C., Rehoboth was the place to be on long weekends. It's definitely at least 20 degrees cooler than Washington, D.C. this time of year. That being said, so we're getting into a little bit of the story of how Isaac established himself, and it appears he learned some things from his father. He pulls the same, this is not my wife, this is my sister trick, which, I mean, this is the first time I'm thinking of this, so I'm talking as I'm thinking it out, which may have in part been a way of setting them at ease about who he was and his entourage or household. You know, look, I'm just this Bedouin, unmarried guy. I'm just going to be here for a short time. Don't worry, I'm not establishing some sort of people group or family here. I'm just, I'm just a gigolo, and everywhere I go, people know the part I'm playing, right? He wanted to kind of play a little bit of that game, and then and then surprise, actually, I am a family man, and I actually am establishing a city here, and et cetera, et cetera.
So it's the trickery of the underdog. That's their power, as opposed to having actual power or military power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's doing this by pluck, in the same way that his father did. It's interesting. I was under the estimation that he was already quite wealthy, but something maybe changed within his standing, and certainly did, because Abimelech, now here's the thing. This may not be the same Abimelech from earlier. This may be his son or grandson or something of that nature, but for some reason they don't recognize who he is. And he comes to the land as a stranger. He's welcomed, but there's some drama there. And Abimelech apparently did not know that was the family practice.
It does say that there was famine in the land. So he had the expertise in the background to know how to plant and harvest, whereas somebody who only was a shepherd, like a true Bedouin, wouldn't have really had that knowledge. So you could be right, because he was passing himself off maybe as a Bedouin. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say.
Well, you see this drama pop up with the wells. He clearly has a knowledge about how this works in a way that the people living there did not. And so you've got this back and forth about these wells that he's digging. Where they're like, whoa, there's water here. That water belongs to us. We're actually here with our herds. Give us that water. And he's like, well, and so there's some friction there. Is clearly he's got some skills that he's bringing to the land that the people there do not have. And there's also a clear distinction. They're quarreling over this. He's not sharing with them necessarily. He's trying to do it for himself.
Well, I mean, if Moses is writing this, he's really trying to tell people that trickery was to save his life.
No.
Because if they, you're wed until one of you dies. And so they may well have killed him. It's represented that they would have killed him.
Yeah.
In order to free up his wife for marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, at a certain level, oh, Shelley, you've got your hand up.
Oh, well, actually, it's the same point that Mary was making. And also, it does sound like the Philistines respected marriage, respected women in the marriage. If a woman wasn't married, it sounds like she's fair game for them to lay with her.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at a level too, this whole business about, about a wife's place in this may have something to do also with wealth and privilege and so it may almost be representative of like we feel welcome to go into business with you only under certain circumstances. And so, for him having that appearance of being free to do so may have been beneficial. That being said, because at a certain level, if Rebecca is his sister, there's that potential of going into covenant with him, essentially, right? Like there's that potential of like, well, yeah, we'll do business with you. We'll take your sister as our wife and go on from there. So there's maybe something there where he was representing himself in a certain way in order to build relationships. And it winds up working out anyway. Abimelech, puts out a decree not to touch him, and his safety is guaranteed, and he's able to go out into the land and dig these wells. He didn't dig the wells until he had that agreement, right? So it's interesting. Let's read on from 23. Mary Lee, if you wouldn't mind reading from 23 to the end of the chapter.
From there he went up to Beersheba. And that very night the Lord appeared to him and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you and will bless you, and will make your offspring numerous for my servant Abraham's sake. So he built an altar there, called on the name of the Lord, and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well. Then Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzzath, his advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his army. Isaac said to them, why have you come to me, seeing that you hate me and you've sent me away from you? They said, we see plainly that the Lord has been with you, so we say, let there be an oath between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, so that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done to you nothing but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord. So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths, and Isaac set them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. That same day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well that they had dug, and said to him, we have found water. He called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day.
Beersheba is next to Gaza, just to give you a little placement of it. And the only reason I know this is because it's a common Midwestern saying that if someone made you travel far, I had to go from Dan to Beersheba. Dan is in the northernmost part of the Gaza Strip, all the way to Beersheba, which is all the way down south. It's hundreds of miles. And so that's kind of, so it's a little non sequitur for you. But so it appears that Isaac is beginning to even rectify these relationships. So we see a little bit of wheelie dealy, you know, he's got those skills just like his dad. Let's move forward. 27. Here's where the story gets good. Let's see, Mary, if you wouldn't mind reading from 1 to the end of 17. Let's get into it a little bit.
Okay, great. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called his elder son Esau and said to him, "My son." And he addressed, "Here I am." He said, "See, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out in the field and hunt game for me. Then prepare for me savory food, such as I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me game and prepare for me savory food to eat, that I may bless you before the Lord, before I die.' Now therefore, my son, obey my word as I command you. Go to the flock and get me 2 choice kids, so that I may prepare from them savory food for your father, such as he likes. And you shall take it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." But Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, "Look, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a man of smooth skin. Perhaps my father will fail me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse on myself, not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my word and go. Get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared savory food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She put the skins of the kids on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she handed the savory food and the bread that she had prepared to her son Jacob.
So we have here definitely an alliance between the younger son and his mother. But I want to point to something. If you jump back to the end of 26, Esau. It's kind of thrown in there, and if you can quickly jump over it, Esau marries a Hittite. Now remember, we're reading this from the framework of that idea that the Hebrew people are to be set apart, right? And we remember earlier when Isaac was to take a wife, Abraham sent his servant back to his homeland to find someone of his people group, of his tribe, who would share his beliefs and faith for his son to marry. So here we have it, that Esau has now gone outside of the tradition in who he's found to marry. And the Bible kind of dances around this. Later on, we're going to see that Jacob marries one of Abraham's grandchildren. So Jacob keeps it in the faith, if you will. And we'll get to that, and we'll note that when we cross it. But I think that's a very important part of this here. That you know that the point is being driven home. That you know your faith is your family, and in that vein, under that covering, you will find yourself blessed. And so I want to posit that part of this machination over the birthright passing Esau has something to do with the kind of alliances that he was making, and the family that he was building was outside of the will of the Lord.
Wasn't there a time previously in which God implied that his favorite was Jacob, not Esau? Did we not have that earlier?
I think when they were born, let's see here, let's go back.
Which would be counter to what will be the cultural role of first child versus subsequent children.
Yeah, so this was the Lord speaking to Rebecca, and the Lord saying to Rebecca, 2 nations are in your womb. This is in Genesis 25, verse 23. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people born of you shall be divided. One shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. So
it goes back to God.
And it's good to note that. Thank you for bringing this up, that Rebecca was told this directly from the Lord. So she knows, who God has chosen, and she's working to make sure that is the way her household turns out.
And also, if I may, Jacob is more like his mother in that he has smooth skin like a woman. He does not work in the fields like his brother. And so she might have, there may be some identification there. And Rebecca this time is being a trickster against her husband, who was the trickster previously using her. But once again, in this case, she's the underdog as a woman. And she's responsible for the whole plot from beginning to end. She's the one that overheard what Isaac's plan was. She's the one that then secretly tells Jacob and insists that he carry this out, even when he says, "Oh, I might get caught. He might notice that I don't have a hairy skin." And she says, "Don't worry, I got this. Put it on me." And so she's willing to sacrifice herself, her good standing with her husband, in order to get her man advanced. And so that's her power. That's the underdog power. That's a woman's power.
Most definitely. And this is a young man who was under her tutelage in every step of the way, right? He's in the kitchen, he's in the tent, he's, her first son is going out exploring, hunting, doing all of those traditional masculine things. The second son is there in the tent with her, under her watchful eye, being raised by her. So there's a lot to be said of feminine power, and the challenge of that household dynamic on who gets to decide these things.
So the woman gets to decide what happens to the children. She's got household power when she doesn't have power in the larger community.
And this is also, this is the child who she's had that influence over. The other child very clearly is outside of that sphere of influence. And she clearly does not have any trust that he can take their family forward from there. Inez, you look like you have a question. No? All right. So where are we? We're in 27, verse 18. And Beck, if you wouldn't mind reading 18 to the end of 29.
So he went in to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that you may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He answered, "I am." Then he said, Bring it to me that I may eat of my son's gain and bless you. So he brought it to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, come near and kiss me, my son. So he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field which the Lord has blessed. May God give you the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. As soon as Isaac had finished,
Maybe stop there. I believe, or at least I've been taught, that these sorts of blessings or proclamations have the force of law, if you will. So within the scope of that household, it is being made very, this is a coronation, very apropos for today. So within the scope of that household, this is now ringing out to all of the field hands, all of the servants, that this is the desire of the father. Now, how that got disseminated, I'm pretty sure that that Jacob's mother made sure that it was clearly Jacob, right? but this was a coronation. As simple as that. Let's see here. Eric, you wouldn't mind reading from 30 to the end of 40.
Okay, let's see, 30 to the end of 40. Okay, got it. After Isaac finished blessing him and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, my father, sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing. His father Isaac asked him, who are you? I am your son, he answered, your firstborn Esau. Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me too, my father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Esau said, is he rightly named Jacob? He has deceived me like these 2 times. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. Then he asked, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? Isaac answered Esau, I have made him lord over you and have made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. Then Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac answered him, your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck.
I've always felt uncomfortable about this part of the story. Obviously obviously Isaac's realized he's been tricked. And I totally believe it would be within his power to do something about it. Yet he chooses not to. And scripture does not illuminate for us why. Suffice it to say, at this point, I'm sure he's had a conversation with his wife. And I'm sure that the decision is made that he agrees with her. And I think what I see in this, and this is just me outside looking in thousands of years later, what I see in this perhaps is one of those many situations that happens, at least for me in my marriage, where my wife makes the right call when I'm making some sort of traditionally bound call. And then once we're in it to win it together, right? So so I go with it, and lo and behold, she was right the whole time. And it's not clearly said here, but I would imagine that that's what's going on here.
See, I see this as just this whole, Genesis is just a book of deceits. Is you win by deceit. You don't win by faith. You don't win by working with people. You don't win. There's too much in here that's all about wealth and power and deceit and lies. And so to me, I'm having a really hard time with this. Because to me, it's not a good basis for faith. And then to tell people that you are honored when in theory, it's supposed to be everyone. And then you are honoring people who are deceitful and liars.
Yeah.
And to me, don't hold, I don't know, I'm just having fun.
I totally agree with you and have felt that way for a long time. And I think there's a huge difference between the tenor of the New Testament and the Old Testament.
True.
And we come with a New Testament mind and read this. And I think time and again, you have to reframe it in the values of the time.
And I'm not trying really hard to do that.
Yeah.
Because it just, I don't know, I think you could right wrongs. You've got someone who's doing his father's business. He's going out, he's working the land. And you've got, mama's boy sitting there who's not doing anything. And I don't know, I'm thinking, okay, where is someone who is doing what and he's not getting any blessings for that?
And the deep unfairness of this young man who, he's launching out and doing his best to please his father.
And why should it be a winner take all? Why can't it be shared?
And it's very interesting that some other versions later on kind of attribute Esau's difficulties in his marriages to a foresight, like a character flaw or something that his mother saw. It wasn't just that one son was favored, but she saw that Esau was probably not the one to lead on. That just really twists it, that kind of adds salt to the wound, if you ask me, because that difficulty may have been, did he nurse his bitterness? Who knows? Where did his wife's kind of figure I'm marrying Esau because, we're going to,
I'm going to inherit all of this. And then,
it's hard, it's hard to say. But there is a very, very strong tradition in the early literatures all across the Middle East that the heroes win things by trickery.
Yeah.
Also, like, Nancy the spider in African traditions.
Yeah.
May have come going back that far from people walking out of Africa. There is a very strong tradition that intelligence is shown by being able to be, to have trickery. We've talked about how Noah was the first example, though, of someone who was saved by the generosity of God rather than God being the God of many areas around there, who demanded child sacrifice, who demanded sacrifice, who could rape your wife, and rape everybody, who could mistreat his own soldiers, those are, that's another literary oral tradition.
Rosemary?
Actually, I'm thinking that these folks aren't very different from a lot of the people that I see in the news today. It just seems to me that this is kind of, as a historian, I see that the same things occur over and over and over. And this is the reason, it seems to me, that the good Lord, Father, decided to send Jesus down to us to show it how it should be done. We just seem to never learn how it should be done. We continually do the same things stupidly over and over and over. A lot of people I see today have made Faustian bargains because they can do it exactly the way that it says right here that he did and that she did. So, yeah, so we have our clues as to how to take care of this, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. It's kind of in the back of the book.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Moses hasn't even gotten the 10 Commandments yet. So maybe he is showing, this is the way things worked
Mhm.
before the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
You know, God may have an idea these people are gonna be chosen, but this is the way they behaved before they got the 10 Commandments. And then even if he wandered off, you know, and came back down the mountain, they put up the golden calf. So they're not, these people are, this isn't the lives of the saints.
I'm actually
Well, no,
blessed.
but we have the 10 Commandments and we still do the same stuff.
That's very true. We choose not to follow them.
I find it gratifying to see
Great
these
point,
scoundrels, you know, to see these scoundrels can be redeemed. If
Yeah,
anything, yeah, who's that? Oh, Clip, yeah. What were you saying? Oh, you're muted, Clip.
Clip, you're muted.
You know, one of the lessons that come out of this is God's sovereignty. And he, for whatever reason, we don't know, but he chose Jacob over Esau. And we don't know, but that is certainly one of the messages that I've always heard coming out of the story. But then the second thing that is very interesting, you're talking about what a rascal Jacob was here, but the good news is that he was redeemed dramatically in about six chapters later, or 5 chapters later, where he gets God's blessing by wrestling with the angel. So that's a beautiful follow-up to this story.
That's right.
Thanks, Clip. That was important to keep in
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah. I mean, these are
People at their worst.
Yeah, but people have multitudes, you know, people contain all of
Good and bad
this.
in all of us.
And you know, culturally speaking, you know, that this archetype has always been the fan favorite, right? You know, I mean, to be super pop cultural, we love Rocky because he went from the guy who was breaking people's thumbs out in the streets to a guy who learned how to love, who learned how to care for his community, found some level of deep faith, if not in God, in himself, and went and fought the heavyweight champion of the world. We love Mickey Mouse because though he's a little tramp and he sometimes cheats the rules to get food.
Constantly.
Constantly, right? We love Michael Corleone because, you know, despite, you know, all of the stuff going on around him, as much as he detests the violence of his family, he, you know, still finds a way to care for his family, right? So this is an archetype that we know very well, and human beings respond to this very well. And I like to try and meet these stories and these people, though. King David is a great example as well, who's absolutely detestable, and his behavior is completely reprehensible. But I want to meet it with some humility and knowing that I too, you know, have my detestable parts and my approaches to the world that are less than stellar, and I still want God to bless me.
And we just read from David, you know, in the Psalms, that you don't want a burnt offering, you want a troubled and contrite heart, you know, that so you know, you've given me all this and maybe I've gotten it through trickery, but God wants a troubled and contrite heart. And that's not the ways of the world, as Rosemary reminds us.
I would posit, if this is truly written by Moses,
He had a lot of insight.
the younger son of you know, a pharaoh, who was not necessarily by tradition given all of those rights to kingly power, but turns around and raises an army of slaves to rise up against his own brother, and then in exile writes these stories of the younger coming to be the one who's truly favored by God through faith. Then there's something to it. There's something to it
Well,
indeed.
there is definitely the promise of redemption in it, you know, but how do you get the promise of redemption if you don't get people who need to be redeemed?
Well, it's the underdog changing positions.
Yeah.
This is written to the Israelite population. They had for centuries been underdogs.
Ann's not feeling it.
No, no.
And what are you feeling? I'm really curious. I mean, are you buying any of this or none of it or a little bit?
I mean, I understand the concept. I just think that if this is supposed to be the first book about our faith, it's not starting out on a very good, solid foundation.
Well, is it starting out on a foundation as to why we need our faith and why we need redemption? Like what is it painting a picture of what it looks like when we're not behaving in a redeemed fashion?
Oh, not that one.
Okay,
But it is first by time sequence, if nothing else.
Right.
And it does form the background from which our faith emerged and continues to change to the very present and into the future. God is still speaking. Our faith is ever evolving. What was
Well, I
thought
guess
then-
my problem with is what I'm hearing God saying, and this is not to me very.
But
supportive.
that's if you're assuming that God is saying it as opposed to people that had
Well-
faith in God and wrote what they thought God was saying.
Right. But
I
that's,
also think it's important to keep our hermeneutic framework. You know, if the purpose of this is to say that you are to be a set apart people to the Hebrew people, then what was going on there where Esau was not making himself set apart? And I see it in the scripture. If you see in 26, the end of chapter 26, Esau marries Hittites. You flash forward to 27, he loses his blessing on top of his birthright. You know, so Esau's making alliances outside of the tribe. And that is verboten. And I see it from that perspective, that this history here is to highlight in many ways why the Hebrew people are set apart and how the Esau story is a tragedy. This is a man who chose to do business and break bread with people outside of the tribe, and therefore he found himself outside of the tribe.
It was his destiny, however. He was fulfilling destiny, just like Oedipus.
and you know, if you take the timeline concept out of it too, I think Rosemary does that for us, you know, that this is the way people all behave then and now when they haven't been redeemed or, you know, they haven't accepted redemption. They're putting all their eggs in the basket of how rich they can get on earth.
Now, Esau didn't take this lying down. So we should continue on because Esau is going to go for some righteous vengeance. And let's see how this goes. Genesis 27:41. I'll read on. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." But the words of her elder son Esau were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger against you turns away, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you back there from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I am weary of my life because of the Hittite woman. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women, such as these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me?" So more machinations from Rebekah. Let's continue. 28. verse 1. Bill Krieger, if you wouldn't mind reading 28, 1 through the end of 9.
Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said unto him, You shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padam Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take yourself a wife from there of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may be an assembly of peoples, and give you the blessing of Abraham, to you and your descendants with you, that you may inherit the land in which you are a stranger, which God gave to Abraham. So Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padam Aram to Laban, the son of Bethuel the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, and the mother of Jacob and Esau. Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Paddan Aram to take himself a wife from there, and that as he blessed him, he gave him a charge, saying, You shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother, and had gone to Paddan Aram. Also, Esau saw the daughters of the Canaan did not please his father Isaac. So Esau went to Ishmael and took Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, and the sister of Nebajoth, to be his wife in addition to the wives that he had.
So a lot going on there. More of Rebecca kind of teasing out the outcomes that still accord with the blessing that she, believed laid for her son. And apparently Isaac going right on with it. So there's something here that I think we absolve Isaac. We make his wife out to be almost this Lady Macbeth, who's working things and working the angles. But it appears to me more like he's in on it. You see it in the reaction of Esau, who then says, "Oh well, my dad doesn't like these women. I'll go try and find one that he does." So Esau's still trying to work to be within the family good graces, but in some way, shape, or form, he's not. I don't know. What are you guys seeing there?
Same thing.
I'm sorry to comment from the road.
Yes. Elizabeth, you with us? No.
Can
I hear you, but you're breaking up a little bit.
hear me?
No.
Alvin, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, now I can hear you.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Can.
Kind of going back, and I'm sorry I'm so far away, everybody. Wish I could be with you. But as I'm listening, and it's just been such a blessing, this story and going back to all the comments made about history and the nature of mankind and the nature of struggle and power and relationship, we see, I feel, Anne, we do see a very human world where there's greed and deception and all of these things. And we still see God giving us a choice and enabling. And we still see when we are open and when we are still, we can hear and follow the lead of God, if you will. So I hope you don't take too much despair in this story, this Hermetic tale, because I do think it outlines exactly as was being said, the story of the set apart people and how there were all of these poor choices that were made, and how we now see Esau going through the first step of redemption, if you will, trying to make amends and come back into the fold of community. And I love the forbearance and the foretelling of a clip with a handful of chapters out. We'll learn more about Jacob and his pivot and turn, if you will. And then we see the reconciliation of the two brothers. So I don't want Anne to go away feeling so so low. So
Thank you,
Thank you,
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
And we see some massive character flaws on Esau's part, ones that would technically be disqualifying for for leadership. His response to his brother's treachery is to seek his murder.
Well, neither one of them were very, I would not say, if these were two people that were running for office, I would not want to pick either one of them. You got another guy.
I mean, you got a trickster versus the murderer. I don't know which one. But
I'm not sure that Jacob at this point is even, he's just running along. He's being done what he's told. He's not even thinking. He's just, mom's told him to do this. He has no personality here at all right yet. He's just this little piece of molding that mom is just manipulating and his dad manipulating, and hopefully, we know he gets that right now. He just is doing what someone told him to do.
He's the younger son.
Yep, he is.
Mm-hmm. Bill, you got something on your mind. I see it. What are you thinking, Bill?
I was thinking of today's age. Obviously, Esau is tremendously rebellious. He's doing what he wants to do. He's also the picture of masculinity, which today's age is busy denigrating. I've forgotten the term, the chronic masculinity or something like that. And the one that is favored here is the kind of the wimpy redheaded kid that lives in the tents, and the younger son at that. I think it's fascinating that the Lord doesn't look at either one of those cultural or character aspects. He looks ahead. He knows that Jacob will be a godly and a good man. It takes him a while to really embrace his faith. We don't see that until after he's wrestled with God and everything else. But it's fascinating that what is valued in our culture by many people, the masculinity thing is not respected in this case, in that the masculine guy doesn't get the reward, the wimpy guy does.
Yeah.
And by the way, this a wimpy guy who's the third member of the patriarchs, extremely high position in the chain of God's blessing of mankind.
That's right. That's right. There's a lot to it, right? The warrior, the man who could take the land by force, is not the one who inherits the promise. If anything, just to show that it was God's power that brought it to be, right? It would be very easy for us to have a story here where Esau slaughters the Canaanites, and takes their wives, and the rest is history. No, instead we have the story of a family that through pluck and a fair amount of deceit is able to build a future for themselves, by the grace of God, in spite of their shortcomings and flaws. So
it's kind of interesting though, then, because this land, it was also at the end of an era when, when it was settled, like 5,000 years before this was written, so 10,000 years ago. There were lions walking around. There were big cats walking around. It was still a very dangerous in terms of prey animals, and it might have been. It's kind of interesting that this happened at the point where people were beginning to be able to be shepherds and dig wells and have agriculture in this place, because those animals were no longer running the show. They weren't the top of the food chain anymore, and that's a radical change. That's a radical change. And everything has been written so far. You go off in the desert by yourself, you're dead. And it's really likely an animal of prey. Just you don't get time to die of thirst.
These people were nomads. They were.
Yeah.
So going out in the desert was not a big deal to them. That's how they lived their life.
Right, and that's
So-
because they had archers.
You'd
I
have
mean, they
more
had
fear if
hunters.
you were now living in a town than you would if you roamed.
That's true, that's
So
true.
I'm not sure.
Well, I think you had more fear of, I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to be like, the fear was that you'd fall into a relationship with people that was only based on trade and what you could get from them. And, you know, that was kind of an emerging concept, that you didn't have long-term relationships with people in small villages or sustainable agriculture or anything like that. Wasn't that the kind of doubt that was cast on towns?
Yeah, I also feel that, you know, this is an unforgiving age, right?
Yeah, it is.
If you're out there without the skills, you won't survive. There was a famine in the land and no one was digging any wells. No one had the skills to do it, right? And so here comes someone with the skills, but maybe not the political connections. And so how do you build a place for yourself, but yet still remain a set apart people? And I think hidden underneath, you know, the drama of all of this history is a little bit of something there, right? That clearly it's within God's desire, at least at this time, for these people, that they keep it amongst themselves. And you have an Esau, this character, who he is an explorer. He is someone who's charging forth, and he's going to make things happen by the sheer force of his will. And that's not necessarily what God is rewarding in this time.
Yeah, I think that's the heart of the matter of God rewards what God rewards, and humans may or may not know how that's dealt out. And certainly genetically, we have no control over the favors that are our birthrights of whether you're born with or without an illness, with intelligence or athletic abilities, or what talents are doled out at birth is something that only God controls, presumably, more or less. We control a little bit, genetics,
Yeah.
choice of spouse. But I think that there's a lesson there in presuming that man doesn't get to know completely how God chooses who will have the blessings, who will have the good outcome.
I think this might be a good stopping point. We've got Jacob's dream coming up, but I think we should take a little more time with that, and Jacob and Rachel. I have my doubts on if we're going to finish the book of Genesis. But we've made a good dent.
Yeah.
We've gotten 3 patriarchs in. All right.
And
That's-
we're gonna go
Lots
to
is
past the
happening.
11th. I mean, we're gonna go to the 15th or
I'm
something.
going to talk with Doit in the next day or two about, the possibility of maybe finishing up. But I also need to talk with him about what he would like to do with the class going forward. So, but yeah, we'll get to it. But next week we'll continue. Hopefully, I'll be here, and so will our rector. So
That'll be
yeah,
fun.
it should be a lot of fun. But this is a good spot for us to stop and pray.
Alvin, just one thing, I thought today's session was remarkable. I really appreciated a lot of the comments and insights people had. Great work, everybody.
It is a
Thank you, Eric.
pleasure to share this faith with all of you.
Oh, look at Inez.
That's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing this. This is where community really comes together, and
It's a good place where we can ask and question and say, I don't get it. And it with me. Always.
Well, I mean, this story is inherently unfair, and Esau is a sympathetic figure. I see a man trying the best with the means that he has to try and figure it out in his own way, and it's not working out. And sometimes that's just the truth of the matter. We have all felt that. we've done right, we've done it the right way. We maybe made some small human mistakes or some judgment errors that now have left us in a way worse position than we would have been otherwise. And,
Either your mom or your dad support you.
I mean,
Question.
yes, I know.
I just have one question, please, that I didn't ask before. In the last line 8 and 9, when Esau was seeing that his father disliked the women of Canaan, could you tell me again who Ishmael? He went to Ishmael. Is he going back to what his father would want? Could you please, who is Ishmael?
So Ishmael, remember, was Isaac's older brother. So Abraham had a child with the Egyptian woman, and that's Ishmael. And then you see this thing where Sarah had Ishmael and his mother put out of their house. And so Ishmael and his mom went and they explored in the land of Canaan. So they're there, mingled in with those people. And so you see in Esau here a situation where he goes, well, my father would like me to keep my marriages within the family or to keep a descendant within the bloodline. So I'm going to find someone who fits that bill. Now, he didn't do it the right way. He didn't go back to Midian. Go back to Abraham's homeland, which is, Padam Aram and stuff like that, to go find a wife. But he found a descendant of Abraham to marry, but it's not quite right. It's not not from the right line.
I thank you. I think I might have missed that because I missed a couple Bible studies. And would you please remind me? Well, I'll go back and look what chapter that was where about Ishmael, because I obviously missed something in the story.
Oh, it's all right. Let's see here.
Does anybody know? Because I'll go back and read it and I'll be able to get it.
So this is Genesis 16.
Okay.
You'll find the story of Ishmael.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Then if you keep going forward, I'll find where Ishmael gets put
I can
out.
find it. I'll go back to 16 and I'll find it. Okay.
16 is the birth of Ishmael. 18 is where Ishmael and his mother are sent away, I believe.
Oh, is that Sarah? Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah. Well, no, Sarah's not Ishmael's mother.
I'm sorry.
It was what was her name?
Hagar?
Oh, Hagar.
Hagar. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Hagar
Yeah.
is Ishmael's mother. So Hagar and Ishmael get sent away. And then you have Sarah gives birth to a child. And that child is Isaac. And Isaac is the father who gets tricked by Jacob in the story that we just read.
Okay. Thank you. Obviously, I missed an important part of the story. Thank you.
It's quite the soap opera that we've been doing here. This is,
Well, the only thing I could say is when you're talking about it didn't seem fair, Heather, my daughter, said once to her father, David, my husband, David, but Dad, that isn't fair, whatever it was. They were speaking. And he said, Heather, life isn't fair.
There.
oh, that's right.
So we just have to accept that life isn't fair, and we don't want to accept that, especially if it happens to oneself, if you will.
I tell my children all the time, the only fair is in Puyallup, where you can go see the animals and there are rides. There's fair. All other than that.
Learn to make jam.
Yeah.
That's good.
And as they're like the characters in a Russian novel, you just have to sit down and make little diagrams.
Yes, I was thinking
Yeah.
about a family tree.
There-
Yes, I
Yeah.
think I need a visual.
Some Bibles have one, so.
Yeah, you can buy those, I think, online. I
Some
think they
Bibles
got
have
those.
them too.
Some Bibles have them, but if you go to Olive Tree, I think it's, or Olive Press, I think it's Olive Press. I think they're online. It's Olive something. And
Probably something
they
in
sell
Canada
stuff
has
like
it.
that. They sell a lot of more Calvinistic and more conservative Bibles and stuff. But you know what? So the illustrations and those lineages are there. I think. I'm almost positive. I've got
Yep.
things on, I downloaded.
I've
Stuff from
got
that.
one right here. I'm gonna
I'm
put
sure
the link in the chat.
It's probably
Thank
something-
you.
I think Mary means Olive Garden. Just kidding.
When you're there, you're family. Let's see here. Let me add that to the chat and our esteemed senior warden, if you wouldn't mind praying us out, that would be a blessing.